And what it says basically is it eliminates the secret ballot election. It puts a gag order on the employer. The union will write a letter that the employer has to sign that they're basically in agreement with the program. And worst of all, in my opinion, you have to give them a list of all your employees and their home addresses. That's so they can go out and card check them, force them, intimidate them into signing cards, because they only need 50% plus one. So I looked at this contract manager and I said, I'm not going to sign the agreement. It's morally wrong. I'll never sign it. If you want to have an election, I'll live with the election and I'll live with the results. He looked at me and he says, Mr. Bego, we enjoy conversation, but we embrace confrontation. We are going to attack you, your employees, your customers, and everybody associated with you until you give in. And I smiled at him and got up and walked away. You have to understand something. Nobody invited the SEIU to Indianapolis or to Cincinnati or Columbus, Ohio. It was a three-city campaign. 3 cities, 1 future is what they called it. None of the employees invited them. None of the employees wanted them. It's a business program. They look at each city and say, we can organize these many janitors, multiply it by the monthly dues, that's their revenues, they know their costs, they know what their profit is. Yes, they do make a profit, even though they are listed as a non-profit organization. Within 60 days, they started attacking my company. They call it a corporate campaign. Death by 1,000 cuts. And I'm going to submit to you, that's what they're doing to this country right now. Death by 1,000 cuts. It's not a corporate campaign, it's a campaign against America. And they're silently doing it behind the scenes while everybody's watching all the news flashes and everything on TV. And I'm going to give you a few examples in just a minute. But let me tell you about some of the 1,000 cuts. Immediately they started passing out flyers and banners on the streets, picketing on the streets, rallies. They enlisted people like the Interfaith Workers Justice Group out of Chicago, clergy people, Jobs with Justice, and others to go after our customers. Oh yes, and politicians too. To have our contracts negated and us thrown out of the buildings. Don't believe it? Senator Bayh's office called one of my major customers in Indianapolis and asked him to cancel our contract because we weren't a union company. The clergy group, they got a copy of one of our employee newsletters that also went to our customers. They got our customer list. They sent letters all over the country to our customers saying that we were abusive, evil people that took advantage of our people. They misconstrued the truth at every turn. Sound like somebody you hear on TV every once in a while right now? It should, because he learned from the same playbook. I wish I could show it today, and I did like Monday night at the Tea Party in Palm Beach. I have a 2008 video of our president standing in front of the SEIU saying that he had been a part of them his whole life. He was trained by them, he was an organizer with them, he believed in them, and he was going to help them paint this country purple. Yep. That's all you need to know about our current president. But let me help you a little bit more. I told you there's a corporate campaign against companies like us. I didn't get a copy of this till after we had beaten the SEIU. This is the SEIU's corporate campaign manual on how to bring down businesses. People, this is what we're fighting. They do this every day. This is their job while the rest of us are out working, earning a living, taking care of our families. And they do it using politics. You think they're not serious? See how thick this is? This is an individual training manual for an organizer that we picked up in Texas. This is what you're up against. The current president was trained in this. When you see him talking on TV and making statements, he's like Ronald Reagan. Or that's the Republicans' fault. Or he says things that just don't quite ring true. This is where he got it. He was trained in this. Let me tell you a couple stories. An employee, an elderly black woman, in downtown Indianapolis, about my age, elderly, would come out of the buildings every night after a job, and the union thug would be there waiting for her, and they'd want her to sign a card, a union card, and she says, "Look, no, I'm happy with what I'm doing, please leave me alone." This went on for a couple of weeks. Then they start offering her money. They start following her to her car and holding her car doors shut. She was terrified, had supervisors walking her out at night. And finally, one night they went to her and they said, "You don't understand. You're going to be union whether you like it or not. Sign the darn card." And she did. We know because when we took them to an appeals hearing, she had written out an affidavit with that story. We had similar stories throughout Indianapolis and Cincinnati of this type of abuse. How well would you hold up under that type of situation? Company-wise, they were filing unfair labor practices against us, 40 of them within 11 months. Unfair labor practice is a complaint that you're violating labor law. Let me tell you the significance of that. You have to defend yourself legally. We spent close to $1 million defending ourselves legally. Thank God our company was sound enough we could do that. A lot of companies can't. They also filed OSHA complaints against us. One of them was in Cincinnati at a college we cleaned that was not a medical school. They said EMS forces their employees to take human body parts out in bags every night. While this was going on, they were putting articles in the press saying how we abused people, how we kept people in poverty, how we ruined the middle class. Sound familiar? It's the playbook, people. This is what they do. The clergy they recruited, they blocked the doors of our customers and had to be hauled off by the police. They sent letters to our customers telling them how bad we were. I'm going to tell you one more story. The clergy wanted to meet with me, so I agreed to do it finally, and I had my daughter with me, Kelly. Kelly was about 27 at the time. And as we sat down with this group of about 6 clergy people, the first gentleman, a Methodist minister out of Speedway, looked at me and he says, "We want you to be neutral." And I said, "Reverend, I am neutral. I've told the SEIU that let's have an election, I'll live with it." I even put an ad in the Indianapolis Star, half-page ad, saying, "SEIU fish or cut bait. Let's have an election." And they refused to respond. He says, "You don't understand. By neutral, we want you to sign the neutrality agreement." I said, "Reverend, have you ever seen a neutrality agreement? Have you ever read one?" He says, "No." I said, "Why would you want me to sign it?" "Because we want you to be union." The next clergy person was a Catholic priest. I happen to be Catholic. And I looked at him and I said, "Father Tom, we're a good company. We've done these things throughout the years to help our people, make sure they have benefits." Oh, by the way, they'd been attacking that we made people use hazardous chemicals and bad equipment and all that. I told Father, I said, "Father, we own our own supply company. We have state-of-the-art equipment and chemicals and processes. We do all these things. Why would you want us to sign this agreement?" And he says, "David, we don't care about the facts. We just want you to be union." And I looked at him and I said, "Do your congregations know what you guys represent?" And the gal from the Central Christian Church looked at me and said, "Mr. Bego, it's none of their business. We make those decisions." About that time, Kelly was about ready to get out of her chair and I had to hold her down. And I said, "Well, if you make those decisions, shouldn't you have the facts?" And she says, "We're busy people. We don't have time for the facts." This is the type of mentality that you're fighting. This is the same mentality that's in the White House. I said one more story. I'm going to tell you one more. I have some of these back here too. This is a flyer. On Halloween of 2007, the SEIU had little kids trick-or-treating in my neighborhood. I live in a pretty good-sized neighborhood. And as they received their candy, they would hand our neighbors these flyers that says "House of Horrors," where EMS employees are abused and mistreated. And while this was going on, they had union thugs in cars driving up and down the streets. My neighbors were terrified. In addition to that, you used little kids to do your bidding. It should tell you something about the enemy that we're fighting. They have no scruples. Anything is open game to them. I hope you will wake up and listen to me. We beat the SEIU. And the reason we did is we refused to give in to their intimidation and thuggery. But I have to tell you, all my major competitors gave in. 95% of businesses give in. I had one competitor down in Cincinnati that tried to hold firm. But with all the flyers and the press releases and the clergy and everything, his wife finally went to him and said, "Look, sign the neutrality agreement, because if you don't, I'm going to divorce you." And he did. I had another businessman out of Fort Wayne I talked to. He says, "Dave, I'm behind you on this 100%, but I can't go through what you went through. I would fold. I don't want my name out there." This is what this movement expects.